Tonight, the loss of a pioneer, really, Madeleine Albright. She was the first woman U.S. Secretary of State. She's passed away. And tonight we take a look at the life of a woman who will be forever remembered as a trailblazer in U.S. history. As a diplomat, where tact and treading gingerly on contentious issues are the norm, Madeleine Albright was never one to mince words.
This is not cojones. This is cowardice.
Whether it was her colorful use of language condemning Cuba for shooting down U.S. pilots or her strident assessment of the leader of Iraq.
I don't think the world has seen, except maybe since Hitler, somebody who is quite as evil as Saddam Hussein.
The Iraqi dictator was said to be so incensed by Albright's verbal attacks, he published a poem in Iraqi newspapers calling her an unrelenting serpent. Albright's response was one of quiet defiance. From that moment forward, she wore a brooch in the shape of a serpent at every meeting with the Iraqi leadership. She began using her pins, as she called them, as a way of sending subtle messages without uttering a single word. Born Marie Jana Korbalova to a Czechoslovakian diplomat, Albright and her family fled the former Czechoslovakia after the Nazi invasion in 1939. She found safe haven in the United States in 1948. Raised Catholic, she became a U.S. citizen, married Joseph Albright, had 3 children, all while earning her Ph.D. and learning multiple languages. In 1982, Albright took a prestigious position as professor of international affairs at Georgetown University. But it was the shock of her husband asking for a divorce around that same time that changed the course of her life.
There was an identity crisis. As it turns out, I think those next 10 years were the ones that were the most influential.
She poured herself into her work, becoming foreign policy advisor to then presidential candidate Bill Clinton in 1992. Clinton, in turn, tapped her for the post of U.S. ambassador to the United Nations after he won the White House. As UN ambassador, Albright became known for her tenacity and determination to elevate U.S. interests at the UN through what she called aggressive multilateralism.
We must summon the spine to deter, the support to isolate, and the strength to defeat those who run roughshod over the rights of others.
Albright pushed hard for U.S. boots on the ground in the Balkans. The U.S. administration chose diplomacy instead, a decision that came at a costly human price. An even bigger regret was the failure of the U.S. to intervene to stop the Rwandan genocide in 1994.
I, Madeleine Corbell Albright.
Lessons learned from her past and the present as Albright cemented her place in history, becoming the first ever female U.S. Secretary of State in 1997. The Kosovo conflict erupted the following year, and Albright lobbied forcefully for intervention from our allies in NATO. The NATO-led effort helped Kosovo gain independence from Serbian control, and the ICC indicted Serbian President Slobodan Milosevic for war crimes.
Never again will there be massacres and mass graves.
Through it all, Albright's experience as a refugee who found the American dream was omnipresent in her life.
My life reflects both the turbulence of Europe in the middle of this century and the tolerance and generosity of America throughout its existence.
In her later years, Albright's comments in support of Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton backfired.
There's a special place in hell for women who don't help each other.
She apologized for the timing of her so-called undiplomatic moment in a New York Times op-ed. She seized the opportunity to make a passionate case for gender equality. She said, quote, "My hope is that young women will build on the progress we have made, but that will happen only if women help one another. And for those who do that, there will always be a special place of honor." Well, Madeleine Albright died of cancer. She was 84 years old.